Okay, so thank you for joining our webinar today, titled Effectively Navigating Your Legal Career, How to Proactively Target New Career Opportunities in Today's Market, from MLA's Interim Legal Talent team. My name is Heather Nielsen, and I'll be your host today behind the scenes. I work on the marketing team here at MLA, and I'm excited to be hosting this session with my colleagues, Erica Hayward and Nina Houston. Before we get into it, let's go over some quick, brief housekeeping items. You should all be able to see the screen right now and hopefully hear my voice. All attendees are in listen-only mode for the duration of the presentation, and as a reminder, the call is being recorded. The recording will be available on our website in the next few days. Rest assured, if you have to jump off early, we will also send out the recording to everybody who signed up in this year as well. Today's webinar will be approximately 1 hour, including Q&A. You may ask a question at any time throughout the event, and we encourage you to do so. At the top right of your screen is the GoToWebinar panel. Just open up the console, type a question, and hit submit. Your questions will be visible to me only and not the audience members. We will not share your identity with the rest of the audience. We will try our best to respond to all of them during the presentation. However, we will hold Q&A till the end. We will also provide you with a quick survey at the end of the webinar. We hope that you'll complete it. It's short and takes about 1 to 2 minutes tops. Before I hand this over to Erica and Nina for some introductions, I just want to give you a little bit of information about Interim Legal Talent. Interim Legal Talent offers experienced attorneys and legal professionals access to short-term and long-term consulting opportunities with both Fortune 500 legal departments and AM Law 200 firms. While MLA has been around for more than 35 plus years, the Interim Legal Talent team was established in 2010. We have 60 plus recruiters worldwide, operate out of 12 offices globally, and last year filled more than 400 assignments. We offer both part-time and full-time opportunities so that you can explore the best opportunities that fit into your professional and personal needs. Now that I've told you a little bit about who we are, I'm going to turn this over to Erica and Nina for some brief introductions on who they are.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nina Houston, and I am a Managing Director and Practice Lead here at Major Lindsay in Africa. I oversee our recruitment efforts in the Midwest and the Southeast markets, and for the last 3 years, I've matched highly skilled attorneys with interim and long-term career opportunities across the country. Prior to joining MLA, I specialized in talent acquisition and workforce development.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erica Hayward, and I'm a Managing Director and Practice Lead for Major Lindsay in Africa's Interim Legal Talent team in the Northwest. Prior to joining MLA, I practiced law in Los Angeles for over 10 years in the areas of civil litigation and labor and employment. For the last 8 years, I've focused on matching top-tier legal talent to a variety of interim roles.
Awesome. So thanks again for joining us today. We're really excited for this opportunity, and I'm hoping that something we share impacts your search for the better. With the local news and social media buzzing around pending recessions and impending layoffs, we understand that the pressure of finding a new job during times like this can be overwhelming, to say the least. Whether it be intentional or unexpected, making a move in today's market does not require you to sacrifice the direction of your career. And that's what we're here to discuss today. In fact, we've designed this webinar to offer a high-level overview of what we've seen in the market to offer best practices along the way. Think of this as more food for thought than anything else. For the next 30 minutes, Erica and I will cover what to consider before submitting an application, where to find new roles, resume writing tips that get you the interview, how to leverage LinkedIn, making a good impression during your interviews, and things to consider once you've landed the offer. I'm sure we'll cover something that piques your interest today. So drop your questions in the chat, and Heather will be sure that we answer as many as possible. Whether you are a mid-level attorney with goals of becoming a general counsel or a GC looking for more flexibility, the best place to start your professional search is getting clear on where you are now versus where you want to be. I can't stress this enough. Being open to anything can lead you to professional disappointment and unmet expectations. I know it also sounds a bit basic, but taking the time to create a long-term plan before you apply has even been proven to help legal professionals at various stages of their career. Not only will it guide your decision-making process, it'll help you stay in the driver's seat of your own career progression, no matter what happens in the market. So whether it's been a while since you've refreshed your goals or whether you've never considered this approach, now is the time to do so because it's never too late to give it a try. Last year, I wrote an article about career mapping, a tool that I personally use to guide my own career. To keep it simple, my career map is 3 stages: recruiter, recruiter manager, and when I grow up, maybe I'll be a VP of recruitment. Who knows? But the point I'm making is that by identifying a clear plan, I've set the expectation that no matter what, the direction I'm heading in and the roles that I choose will always serve as a stepping stone to get me to the next stage of my plan. So it's simple, right? Well, maybe not so much in the legal industry, but the good news is I've prepared an example using a SMART goal formula. SMART goals can be a powerful tool when you are in your career and can also be changed as you grow and decide you want something different. There's no pressure to have the same SMART goals in the January of this year or December of the same year. These things are up to you. No matter what, you're establishing a long-term vision and setting the direction of your career compass in the direction that makes the most sense to you rather than where the wind may attempt to blow you. The best part is the extra of confidence may also inspire brave decisions to explore new routes to the same destination. So let's use a case study as an example for a legal-centered career map and its applicable SMART goals. We'll call this attorney George. George is in his 3rd year of practice as a commercial contracts attorney. He's already moved in-house, and he's noticed that the most senior members of his team, including the AGC, supports the company in both contract negotiations and mergers and acquisitions. George has already made the decision internally that he wants to become a GC one day. So he developed a long-term goal to achieve that title within the next 5 years by gaining valuable M&A experience. Shortly after making that goal, George's company announces a reorganization, and he realizes that he needs to consider what's next. Instead of targeting opportunities that are fairly easy, especially when it's a lateral move, he's using this as an opportunity to create a short-term goal that will serve as his #1 tool in deciding which opportunities to apply for. That short-term goal became identifying at least 10 companies nationwide that are known to conduct a high volume of acquisitions. Once he identified the company, he strategically applied for at least 2 roles a week, and that would require him to split his time between negotiating contracts and negotiating some sort of M&A transaction, ideally due diligence or post-merger integrations, which are fairly common for attorneys early in their career. So these roles will ultimately serve as a stepping stone to start him on his journey toward the kind of AGC who handle both those contracts and those complex mergers and acquisitions. Both goals were specific, had a measurable time frame, they were relevant to his long-term vision, and also realistic based on where he was today. As a result, he's one of many people who were able to leverage this practice to land well despite what was going on around him. So I hope that made sense. And if it didn't, don't forget to drop those questions in the chat. We will be sure to address as many as possible. But in the meantime, let's also touch base on the quiet hiring phenomenon. We've read the same articles, and we can also confirm that quiet hiring is really a thing. It's actually quite common and started well before COVID-19. In fact, many companies that were recently impacted by the layoffs are using the same practice to address their own needs. Simply put, Quiet hiring is a technique used by hiring teams that acknowledges their budget and the demand for human capital, and the legal industry isn't an exception to this practice. The opportunity to hire quietly may present as an existing attorney transitioning into a newly created role to address a specific gap, or expanding the responsibilities of its paralegals rather than backfilling the loss of a junior attorney, or even relying on a recruitment agency to conduct a confidential search for part-time support or long-term consultants, rather than advertising that position on their own website. I'm sure that you probably experienced or witnessed some of these situations. So I just want to reconfirm that quiet hiring has always existed. And so there's only two things that we recommend that you focus on now that things are picking up in this space. So what does this specifically mean for your job search? We'd like you to consider two things. First, there are many more opportunities that are publicly advertised. Secondly, those that are advertised may be outside of your current industry. Due to an increase in the available talent pool, it's becoming more and more necessary to embrace the quiet hiring phenomenon and pivot between industries to remain in the driver's seat, especially when faced with circumstances outside of your control. In my previous example with George, I discussed or described him as an attorney who decided to be proactive during uncertainty. What I didn't mention is at the time of the announcement, he had been working for a tech company and was able to land with within the auto industry. The company he selected had a business model that thrived on acquiring smaller brands, and they had also made a commitment to integrating new technology into their existing products. He never had to sacrifice his technology transaction skills, not even a bit, to gain the M&A experience that he ultimately set out to achieve. Today, he drafts and negotiates their most complex technology agreements and supports their post-merger activities, specifically with data security and systems integrations. As a fifth-year attorney he is now, this is a huge value add to his resume. So the tech industry may always seem ideal. However, his decision to pivot will increase his long-term marketability, even if he decides to return to a major tech company. Either way, he understood that non-linear career paths were totally different from the stigma of job hopping. And with the blessing of his family, he took the risk and landed well. Remember, think of non-linear movements as an alternative route to the same destination. To maintain consistent employment in a volatile market, here are a few routes that have been tested by legal professionals under similar circumstances. So let's say you love your current company. I've been there. I love MLA, and I don't ever see myself leaving. But someone like me might consider exploring a new scope of work. The key to relevancy are understand the realities of your day-to-day work that crosses over to another practice within the same organization. As an attorney, maybe think of a litigator who handles day-to-day contract disputes. Believe it or not, they've developed a transferable skill, which I can identify as risk assessment. From my experience, candidates that successfully pivot from litigation to commercial contracts are some of the best issue spotters that I get to meet on a daily basis. I've also heard from the references that they have the natural ability to take firm stances in negotiations whenever needed. Not only could you end up being first in line for internal opportunities, you have also gained an additional skill that you can translate outside of your current employer to position yourself for corporate counsel opportunities that require their litigators to bring an additional skill set to support the overall needs of their business. Let's say you have a desire to avoid layoffs. That's a natural desire. So consider opportunities in a recession-proof industry, or even those that are recovering from COVID-19. Think of a service-based company that once struggled or thrived within the pandemic, like a med tech company, a grocery chain, a retail brand, a transportation provider, a company that did consumer packaged goods, or even pharmaceutical companies. Each industry is heavily regulated and they may have an increased need to hire, just like the tech companies did back in the summer of 2020. Last but not least, consider aligning yourself with part-time positions or long-term contracts with well-known brands. Remember, you don't have to take a step back. It just requires you to be thoughtful, consistent, and willing to explore opportunities that may sound a little bit different from what your goals may have looked like before the shifts. If you want to avoid gaps in your resume, maintain consistent income, or even remain in a specialized industry that was impacted by the layoffs, this is a perfect solution. For additional support in identifying interim opportunities that align with your goals, leverage the help of a recruiter to offer additional insight. If you don't remember anything else from today's presentation, be sure to remember that we are encouraging you to never underestimate the power of transferable skills. Erica will likely touch base on this throughout the presentation, but it's important to note early that the most transferable skills, the most marketable skills, are those that are absent of personal feelings or opinions. While I'd like to encourage anyone to go for their goals and reach for the sky, there will be opportunities for those who want to transition that have the ability to directly communicate the relevant skill sets and how they can leverage those to hit the ground running. You may be a quick learner, but that is as equally important as understanding the basics of drafting an NDA. All right, so before Erica dives into resume writing, we also like to share the following data from end of year 2020. Since COVID-19, more companies have embraced the concept of remote work. And as a result, MLA has worked diligently to collect data specific from candidates, general counsel, and law firm partners to analyze trends in the market from 2020 to 2022. If you haven't already guessed, this data is representative of industries, practice areas, and market locations that have experienced the most growth. We'll be able to share our findings from Q1 2023 once it's available, but in the meantime, the last 2 years present as a perfect case study to demonstrate how many attorneys were able to pivot through layoffs, shutdowns, and freezes. So, I'm doing good with examples, so I'm gonna give another. The surge of remote work allowed a lot of L&E attorneys from smaller markets like Georgia and Florida to target opportunities in New York and California. These may not have been readily available to them on the day-to-day prior to the change in market. These were grocery chains, retail brands, healthcare institutions, and supply chain companies that were deemed essential in producing household goods and services. Similar to the entertainment companies who once employed them, they also experienced a high volume recruitment, increased turnover, unionized workforces, and other employment issues that require litigation, advice, and counsel that supported a global workforce. While the entertainment and travel companies struggled to become more relevant, struggled to become compliant with social distancing, travel restrictions, and laws that ultimately changed the way they did business, these people were able to shift with the market rather than fighting it. Eventually, the transactions attorneys that may have been originally practicing in the Bay also had the opportunity to break into fintech companies in the Northeast. We've personally witnessed their transition into complex payments transactions and crypto advisory that are still in demand today and are proven to offer a high earning potential. So, I want to address the elephant in the room. That probably is, what if you're worried about relocation? That's a valid concern, but that does not have to be the case. Be sure to explore both hybrid and remote roles in various markets, as hybrid work can be negotiated to look like occasional travel rather than weekly office visits. In the next portion of our webinar, Erica is going to lead us through the conversation of resume writing in 2023.
Thanks, Nina. Before we start in on resume best practices, we have a brief poll for you. Heather's going to put up the answer choices, and we ask that each of you provide your answer. The poll question is, what do you think is the most important item to include in your resume? Is it A, education, B, specific skills or experience, C, list of core competencies, or D, professional licenses or affiliations? We're going to give you a few moments to complete that poll.
Erica, we're about 49%, so let's give it another second or two, if you don't
Great.
mind. Okay. Okay, just about 70%, so if you haven't voted yet, vote quickly.
Let's close it. We want to close it in about 20, 30
Okay.
seconds.
Yep, I'm going to show you the answers. You ready?
Ready.
Oops, it went away. Give me a sec. There we go.
Well, it looks like most of you got the answer right, because the answer is B. That's great. Specific skills or experiences that are relevant to the position to which you are applying are the most important item on your resume. This will grab the reader's attention and remove all assumptions regarding what you have or have not done. We recommend that you maintain a master version and a secondary version of your resume that matches your experience to the specific job or industry to which you are submitting your candidacy. Update the master version of your resume at least once a year. It's hard not to feel like every time you revisit your resume and or your cover letter that you will need to completely rework them for different job opportunities, but know that many recruiters and hiring managers are really just seeking a few key items in your submission. Your resume is a critical component of your job search. It can open the door to a new opportunity by making a connection between you and a job. When you are considering what to include in your resume, don't be tempted to use an AI tool such as ChatGPT to create content for your resume. AI simply mirrors back the information provided by you and may not align your skills sufficiently with a targeted role. Review your resume for substance and keywords that align with the job description and a company. If a resume can't make the direct connection to the job or company in minutes or even seconds, you may need to get clearer on how your skills align. Be specific about the relevant accomplishments you've achieved in your career. For example, if you've drafted and negotiated commercial and/or technology contracts, provide the types of contracts by name. For a technology transaction role, these could include SaaS agreements, machine learning as a service agreements, software licensing agreements, cloud hosting agreements, etc. Or if you've worked in mergers and acquisitions, provide the size and type of those deals. For example, completed numerous transactions in the $10 to $50 million range for both asset and stock purchase. For regulatory matters, provide those specific regulations with which you have worked. For example, for a privacy attorney, they should specify such regulations as GLBA, CCPA, CPRA readiness, and UK GDPR. You will want to include specific experience with the most marketable skill sets. One final bit of advice on the content of your resume. Remember that honesty is always the best policy. It's relatively easy for prospective employers to confirm experience in education, so always be honest about what you include in your resume. Once you've finalized the content of your resume, it's time to focus on the overall appearance of your resume. The three important areas we will focus on in this segment are proofreading, formatting, and length. While it may seem like these components are extremely elementary, I can't tell you the number of times I've seen resumes from highly experienced individuals with errors in these areas that should have been corrected. When it comes to proofreading, please make sure you do the following. First, check verb consistency. You will want to make sure that you are clear as to what you have done as well as what you are currently doing. Second, ensure that the dates of employment are correct and consistent. I once had a candidate whose dates of employment in his resume did not match up to the dates in his LinkedIn profile, and as a result, he did not get the job. Third, spell checking and grammar. Most word processing programs such as MS Word have spell check and grammar check functionality. However, even those programs can miss a lot of key mistakes. In order to avoid those mistakes, I would recommend that you have someone proofread your resume, and it's also a good idea to read your resume out loud to yourself. You can also download an add-on such as Grammarly to help check with grammar. The next important part of your resume to consider is formatting. You may be tempted to utilize a different or unusual format for your resume in order to make it stand out. Unfortunately, utilizing a non-standard format may be more of a distraction for the reader and make the resume more difficult to read. In essence, the resume stands out, but not in a good way. As such, it's best to avoid any funky formats or putting too much information on one page because a resume that is too hard to read might not get read at all. The last component of your resume is length. There are a few hard and fast rules when it comes to resume length. A 2-page resume is perfectly acceptable. A common mistake that candidates will make is to try to cram the information from a 2-page resume into 1 page. Alternatively, having a resume that is too long may not get read all the way through, especially on the first review. How you use your resume to market yourself is also important. Consider attaching your resume to your LinkedIn profile, but don't simply cut and paste your resume content into your LinkedIn profile. We will be covering your LinkedIn profile in more detail in the next segment. Second, make sure to lean on a trusted advisor or experienced recruiter to offer feedback on your resume before applying to positions. They can help you identify certain areas that may need to be revised or enhanced in order to more effectively market yourself to new opportunities. I'm now going to pass it back over to Nina to talk about leveraging LinkedIn.
All right. While thousands of like-minded professionals exchange their thoughts and build connections, we'd like to remind you that LinkedIn offers a suite of mobile services designed to help you use their platform as the lead generation tool that it really is. Unlike Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn offers 7 core sections to build a profile that you'll use to manage your professional identity. While each section actually adds value, 4 of them can be used to market yourself more clearly than others. That's your photo, your summary, your education, and your experience sections. Both 4 sections serve as the foundation for the use of its highest power. Recruiters and managing counsel can't help but to analyze your profile as an extension of your resume and professional brand. To increase your chances of landing an interview or even referrals from your first or third connections, consider refreshing or even creating a clear, quality photo for your LinkedIn profile. Think warm and friendly, not dark and moody. Complete the About Me section. I probably notice this on a daily basis, and it's one of the places in your profile, excuse me, that actually highlights your personality. So take the time to add a few sentences that maybe highlight the services that you offer, excuse me, or tell a story about what inspired your movement. Either way, you'll start to optimize your profile from here. If you haven't heard of the optimization concept, I want to mention that optimizing is a mathematical programming tool that helps you and others quantify your level of experience. Excuse me, guys. If you've typed the word privacy one time, the probability of being qualified for a privacy role is dramatically low. While making the effort to repeatedly mention buzzwords associated with privacy, you'll drastically suggest that you are more qualified for the role. Here's an example. Let's say you have the relevant privacy experience. You've done data privacy agreements, you've done addendums, you've advised on GDPR experience, and you've even gotten your SIP certification. All of that is great, but for someone who is specifically searching for candidates that meet that profile on LinkedIn, you are at a disadvantage if your profile doesn't proactively mention those things. So I want to purposely shout out, if you haven't added mention of your GDPR experience, get it on your profile, especially if privacy is what you'd like to continue to do. Similar to Erica's recommendations in the previous section, taking the time to highlight details of your relevant experience will yield the most success when you have a clear goal. Broad phases like a variety of contracts will appear less appealing to a legal team who's actually in search of someone who can handle a large volume of licensing agreements. I hope this makes sense, but taking the time to be specific about your experience, especially if it's related to the work that you would actually rather do, is going to be more beneficial in the long run. Of course, we've mentioned your education, so always include your JD, include your LLM, or relevant certifications that help demonstrate your qualifications for the work that you're looking to target. Again, I referenced GDPR, but if you have that SIP certification, go ahead and add it to your profile. You ultimately improve your optimization score by adding brief summaries in the experience section as well. This section is the portion of your profile that might resemble a resume. And I want to take the time to stress that this is not to be confused as your resume, just an extension of the things that you actually want to do, the things that are relevant to the things that you want to do, and how you'll be marketing your profile and your experiences outside of a traditional application and interview process. While your resume and LinkedIn profiles should generally be aligned, you can optimize this section with the experience that you choose to leverage in this stage of your career. The best example I can give is a corporate generalist who spent the last 10 years of their career doing everything from litigation to employment law to the intellectual property needs that impacted the company. Usually people in this position may be working with a smaller legal team and it just requires them to roll up their sleeves. And that's okay. But let's say you've had enough of the litigation and intellectual property really doesn't interest you. Let's say you really enjoy the SEC filings and governance work. There is no rule against you drafting and designing a LinkedIn profile that highlights the parts of your experience that actually align with what you want to do next. For that person with that background who wants to do governance and securities work, phrases like Section 16, proxy statements, 10Ks, 10Qs, mentioning Forms 3, 4, and 5, those are the type of words that are going to optimize your score and help you find opportunities even when you sleep. The moment you start overpopulating or cluttering your profile with things like employment contracts or regulatory laws that have nothing to do with securities filings, the more you're probably going to increase the chances of being overlooked for that role. These extra steps are going to turn LinkedIn to a powerful search engine. We'll discuss this more in the next slide. In a last Hail Mary to open your eyes to the power of LinkedIn, the search engine capabilities of this platform can be compared to those of Google. By intentionally filling your profile with keywords or phrases aligned with your roles of interest, you're optimizing your profile to be searchable by hiring teams for those positions that we mentioned were advertised or unadvertised opportunities. Just like Google, the strongest profiles will appear in the first 2 pages of your results. If you've ever been recruited by a person like me and you wondered how they found you, this is it. The photo on the screen demonstrates my previous example of why keywords matter. Instead of a corporate attorney, we're demonstrating how a tech person can attract new opportunities even while they sleep. Words like technology, SaaS agreements, and software licensing are common transactions in the tech space. So candidate A and candidate B are now populating on the first page of the search to find an opportunity as a product counsel. This person is actively pursuing people with this skill set. So while the profile designed by an attorney with similar goals may populate on pages 8, 9, and 10, this is usually because they took the time to overpopulate it with references to HIPAA more than the word technology. All right, I really want to make sure that we are able to address the interview process and give everyone enough time to get their questions answered. So I'm just going to focus on the skills section and LinkedIn Premium that you can also use as a tool. So let's say you wanted to keep it simple. You've optimized your bio, you've optimized your descriptions of your positions, and now you want to make a final boost at getting in more keywords. You can use the skills section to give that extra boost. So if you picture your LinkedIn profile in a tiny section where you have friends or family members endorsing you for customer service or leadership, that's the space I'm referring to. Consider replacing those general endorsements with a list of terms that are relevant to the things that you want to do. If you're an IP attorney who'd rather focus on patents than trademarks, it's okay to remove the trademark piece and focus your terms on things like patent law, patent litigation, and patent portfolio management. All of these are relevant skills that are going to improve your optimization and declutter the unnecessary transactions, or the unnecessary sales skets. Also, if you haven't tried this before, consider LinkedIn Premium for job seekers. It's available for a small fee, but you can access more intel about job openings and even see the status of your application. It also includes free emails that allow you to message in hiring managers or network with professionals outside of your third and first connections. Lastly, it also gives you the opportunity to leverage the open to work feature. I know the first thing some of you may be picturing is that green flag on the profile, and this is not what I'm referring to. LinkedIn Premium actually gives you the option of selecting the green flag or going about this in a more discreet way. By selecting the second option, you can alert recruiters and hiring managers behind the scenes so that you don't have to put your job search on blast. Your profile still says that you're employed with your current company, and that's what's going to protect you and keep you undetectable from the recruiters and hiring managers that are at your current company. However, the moment that you end that job date or that end date, that information immediately becomes visible to your former colleagues. So it's pretty much all or nothing. Feel free to test this out on your own with a trusted coworker or advisor. Erica, let's go ahead and dive into interviews and negotiations, and we'll open up questions from there.
Okay, sounds good, Nina. Thank you. So once you've been successful in getting an interview for a new opportunity, there are some important steps to follow to ensure that you have a great interview. You will want to make sure that you are making the best impression during the interview, but you also want to use the interview opportunity to learn more about the company and the role. The purpose of interviews is both for you and the company to assess a match. So preparing to wow and be wowed is critical. In this segment, we're going to cover the 3 P's of effective interviewing: preparation, presentation, and post-interview strategy. The first P is preparation. You want to research the interview team in an effort to build rapport within the first few minutes of the interview. Be prepared to discuss relevant experience and information about the company. Also, be prepared to discuss job movement. If your job movement has been inconsistent or uncertain, you need to be prepared to explain why. The second P is presentation. Be prepared to present your strengths and weaknesses in connection with the role. However, you should try to avoid self-deprecating language and instead present solutions to perceived weaknesses. Be prepared to discuss the boxes you don't check in the position description so that you can proactively present your analogous experience and transferable skills. Be prepared to present an optimistic reply to the question, "Why are you looking?" Present your job search positively and avoid any negative comments about your past or present employers. The third P is post-interview. Prepare 2 to 3 interview questions to deepen your understanding of what the company's expectations are versus your personal desires for growth and longevity. Some post-interview questions we suggest to our candidates include: what are the short-term or long-term goals for this department and how do they relate to the company goal? What are the expectations for performance and training within the first 30 to 90 days? What is your highest priority in the next 6 months and how could someone like me help? Follow up with an email within 48 hours to thank the interviewer for their time. Use this note as a chance to also thoughtfully address what you discussed with their team. If you were working with a recruiter, confirm the right method for sending the note. We're now going to get into some do's and don'ts of offer negotiation. You've made it through this, you've successfully made it through the interview process and you've received an offer. So congratulations in order, but there are definitely some considerations you want to keep in mind when considering an offer. We have some do's and don'ts for you as follows. First, the do's. Come prepared. Know your target compensation and your non-negotiables. What is your bottom line for compensation and benefits? Your why. Understand what originally drove your desire to make a move from your current situation. Consider the consequences of failing to make a change from that situation. Consider the market. No matter if you are currently paid above or below the market, it is important to know that every company has their own budget for the same position. And with the new wage transparency laws, you will have a better idea of the range of compensation for a particular role before you apply. It's also helpful to review compensation surveys for your geography to determine the appropriate compensation for the role. Leverage an expert. If you are working with a recruiter, always make sure to talk to them about the offer, including the reasons why you may be considering accepting or declining the offer. Your recruiter is there to act as your sounding board in all aspects of your career trajectory, including negotiations and market analysis. Now we'll get into the do's, or the don'ts, apologize, for you to consider. Don't ignore the total package. Consider the total compensation offered for the role. Total compensation includes tangible and intangible benefits such as title changes, increased responsibilities, flexibility, growth potential, mentorship, and potential career path. Don't accept a role that is misaligned. Never accept a role that is not aligned with your goals or values. For example, a candidate who is presently in a niche litigation role who wants to broaden their skills into general civil litigation should consider rejecting a role where they would continue to be siloed in another different, but still niche area of litigation, as it would not help them to achieve their goal of gaining more general civil litigation skills. If you are going to make a job move, make sure it meets your career goals and is not simply based on the market or compensation. Don't shop around an offer. Don't shop around an offer simply to force your current employer to counter. The legal industry is small and people do talk. Offer shopping may result in your current employer feeling blackmailed, and the potential employer may feel used or burned by you. Don't automatically accept a counteroffer. Ask yourself, what are the odds that accepting the counteroffer will be good for my career? Statistics have shown that accepting counteroffers only work out well in 5 to 25% of all cases. Additionally, 50% of all employees who accept a counteroffer are generally gone from that employer within the next 12 months. I'm now going to pass it back over to Nina for a few final thoughts before we take questions.
Thanks, Erica. So we spent a lot of time talking about things that you may have already known, but the most important thing to us is that you understand what is driving the hiring manager's decision to either move forward with your candidacy or move forward with another candidate. So before wrapping up, here are a few more trends that we are monitoring across the country. Hybrid roles have become more common as employers are seeking new ways to mandate office visits, at least on a part-time basis. As previously mentioned, resist the urge to self-select out before making an effort to have the necessary conversations that might actually result in you negotiating terms that work best for you rather than the company. While the office mandates are usually driven by the CEO, the general counsel, or the hiring team may be driven to advocate for a candidate who otherwise checks off the boxes. We also bet that you've noticed the new wage transparency laws, and they're changing the way dozens of states now advertise their open positions. No matter if it's a contract or a long-term role or a permanent hire, states like California and Colorado and the city of New York have mandated that employers disclose these ranges. Not every municipality has mandated this practice, so be mindful of demanding wage transparency with a legal team who doesn't have to adhere to that wage notice requirement. It's also important to mention that the presence of a salary band does not eliminate your need to negotiate, okay? There is still much to observe about how these new laws will impact the future of hiring, but for now, simply be prepared to negotiate with facts rather than feelings. Most certainly, a candidate who exceeds the minimum years of relevant experience has the opportunity to leverage this fact to negotiate a rate that's higher than the lower end of that salary band. And we've covered pivoting quite enough, so I'm going to avoid that redundancy. But the tips and tricks that we share today are completely optional. We do hope that they have inspired you in some way to remain consistent and resilient in your effort to find new opportunities, no matter how volatile the market is. If you're still wondering what the key is to remain competitive in today's market, the answer is simple. Know what you're looking for, know the value that you have, be ready to clearly articulate that, and be brave enough to go for the things that you want, even if you're forced to do it in an unexpected manner. Everyone on this call is unique in their career goals and the values that will drive their search. So if you ever can benefit from individualized support, please don't hesitate to reach out to our recruitment team. We'd be happy to connect you with one of our colleagues who's equipped to answer more specific questions about your market. In the meantime, Heather will set us up to start that Q&A.
Hey, thanks, Nina. Nina, just give me a quick little raise of hands to make sure that I'm not on mute. That's helpful to me. Perfect. So this is going to wrap up our discussion on how to proactively target new career opportunities in today's market. Before we go to the Q&A, though, I just want to mention that we know there was a lot of information. So we actually have a bunch of handouts that you can get from the GoToWebinar console. If you look where you submitted Q&A, you can go to the handout section and you'll see 4 of them added there. If you can't figure that out, rest assured, don't worry, we'll send it to you with the video within 48 hours after the call. So they're there. There's one on LinkedIn, there's one on resumes, there's one on negotiating offers, and there's one on some interview tips. So I've got about 10, 15 questions. So ladies, are you ready? Take a sip of your water and get ready for some more questions. Okay, so the first one I have is for Nina. Is it helpful for transactional attorneys to include a deal sheet, for example, or to be more narrative in their resume?
That's a really good question. I've seen both, and the value add with a deal sheet is the relevancy. If you are a litigator attempting to transition into commercial real estate, it would benefit you to remove the deals that are not relevant to your goal, similar to your resume. Make sure that the deal sheet is relevant to what you want to do, regardless if it's representative of mergers and acquisitions or other transactions or litigation that you participated in. Focus on what's most relevant, because those are the things that are going to drive your conversation throughout the interview process.
Thank you. Okay, Erica, how far should that resume go back?
Well, I would say the rule of thumb is between 10 to 15 years. If you have more experience than that, I would say please include the dates of your employment, your previous employment, and the names of your previous employers and your title in the employment that predates the 10 to 15 year range. But that's generally sort of a safe window to include in your resume that will be representative of your skills. You also want to make sure that if that experience that is older than 10 to 15 years, if that is highly relevant to the position you are seeking, you want to make an exception and make sure that that's called out somewhere in your resume.
Perfect. Okay, Nina, thank you notes. Do people still write them? If you're interviewing with multiple people, do you need to send each person a thank you note? Or is a general group note okay?
I think it depends on the situation. In interviews where you are interviewing with 3 to 5 people, if the interview went well and everything that you said was said well, it's okay to draft one email that addresses everybody by name that could be forwarded over to the entire hiring team. and can be used to be discussed while they're going over your post-interview feedback. However, I will say that individualized thank you notes present a unique opportunity to dive deeper into areas of the conversation that you feel present an opportunity to create more clarity. As an example, if they asked about your relevant experience and you kind of caught yourself stumbling and felt like you may have had an opportunity to articulate that better, you may consider writing a separate note to the general counsel who asked that question and giving some hindsight, right? Taking the time to thank him and say, hey, I had a chance to think a little bit more about the question that you asked, and I realized that these 3 points are most relevant to this role, and I hope you consider this. I'm definitely open to feedback, and I'm looking forward to learning from you in the future. Those are the types of situations where taking the time to write multiple letters serve more as a value add than a systematic thing that you need to do in order to look like the best candidate. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Erica, are there still remote opportunities, or is everybody being called back to the office? What are you seeing?
Well, for us in the interim practice, we are seeing a combination of things and kind of mostly driven by geography. As a member of the interim talent team in the Northwest, most of our opportunities are still remote, and there doesn't seem to be any indication that they will change back to either hybrid or on-site. We have seen a few opportunities where there's been a hybrid component or an on-site component, but those are few and far between, at least in the Northwest, and I think for the most part throughout California and the Southwest. Midwest and East Coast, I would say, are going more back to a hybrid model. There's not a lot of on-site requirements for roles, and clients tend to be a bit more flexible as far as if they're not finding great candidates that are willing to come into the office either on a 5-day-a-week basis or a part-time basis, then they're generally tending to be more open to profiles of people outside the geographic area who will remain remote but meet all the skill sets they're looking for. So again, it primarily depends on geography and the types of clients as well. Healthcare and financial services tend to be more of an on-site type of employer versus tech companies, which really embrace the remote model.
What about bots? And how do you avoid the bots? Like basically trying to kick out your resume. How do you, this is all about the optimization stuff you talked about, Nina and Erica. Like, let's talk about bots. Nina looks excited. Nina, talk about the bots.
So excited. I've been toying with the idea of actually creating a video about this. My recommendation is that if you focus on what you really want to do and how it's relevant to the position that you chose to apply for, you can fight your way through the bots. The reality is that every ATS system, which is the applicant tracking system that they're using to collect your resume, has a feature to turn the bots on and off, on and off, on and off. It is not something that is automatic. It is literally controlled by the recruiters who are responsible for the first round of interviews and qualifying candidates. So consider how large the organization is. The larger the organization, the more likely that they are receiving hundreds to thousands of applicants for the same role. It would benefit a recruiter to turn on the bots to easily cut through the fluff and get to the people who actually make mention of the things that they need to see in the resume profile. For a smaller organization, or even with a search firm like us, we have a little bit more time to go through every applicant, take the time to see if we see things that we can assume based on what you have shared, and may make that termination from a more humanistic approach. But by simply taking the time to making sure that your content is relevant, you don't have to worry about a bot. I hope that makes sense.
think Heather Trevelini's ears are buzzing because you're going to do a video. Okay. So, or an article. How much, this is going to be a quickie. How much time typically does a candidate have to accept or reject an offer? Or is that depends on the situation?
I think it always depends on the situation. You know, a lot of clients want to move quickly and want to lock somebody down, and candidates need to be aware that there's a, you know, there is a lot of candidates out in the market right now. So the longer they take to accept the role, it may mean there's somebody else in the wings waiting to be the backup acceptance if they don't accept. Obviously, when considering an offer, you want to take into consideration all the points that we brought up during our segment, but at the same time, candidates also have to be mindful of the fact that there are a lot of candidates out on the market, and so they may be the first in line, but they might not be the only person in line. So it's definitely a case-by-case situation. I think the prime point to take away from this is just transparency with the prospective employer, being upfront about what your situation is, what your hesitancies may be. You may be able to talk through, if you have a hesitancy, you may be able to talk that through with the employer, but again, being transparent and upfront about what your concerns may or may not be with accepting the role, you may be able to navigate your way through that and not risk losing out on the role simply because you've delayed.
Okay. Graduation year, leave on or off resume. I stump you too? How does that happen?
You know, it's not stumping me, but I have to admit that I understand why professionals at a certain level may opt to remove it from their profile. And the assumption that I'm making is that they are making their best effort to avoid certain discriminatory practices that may kick them out of the running because they're perceived as having too much experience. I get it. I absolutely get it. But at the same time, consider other ways to demonstrate why you're qualified for the role. And I think that the best recruiters will make the same assumption and be open to the conversation.
I'm going to try to do two more because we're almost out of time. So any tips for interviewing with people who are younger than they are? Meaning like I'm interviewing with a 20-year-old and I'm not 20, obviously.
No, I mean, I would say, you know, obviously own, you know, whatever your vintage is, but don't try to, you know, throw out pop culture references that you may not have anything you're talking to, you know, any idea what you're talking about. You know, really focus on your relevant skills and experience, because at the end of the day, that's what it really boils down to. You know, don't try too hard to relate on a generational level, but obviously you want to be mindful of not appearing to be in any way, you know, condescending or let me tell you a few things, you know. So I think you just want to act natural, you know, interact with them on a one-to-one basis, and again, really focus on highlighting those transferable, you know, those relevant skills and experience, and if you need to, transferable skills. You know, but I think the key is don't try too hard. You know, you want to present your best foot forward and be natural. And Nina, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I do. I think this is a wonderful question. I think more than anything, you should be exploring and focusing on what you need in a manager, right? If you don't believe that this person carries themselves in a way that aligns with your personality, no matter how old they are, we would recommend that you identify those things throughout the conversation so that you can make an educated decision about whether or not you could thrive in that type of situation. But taking it back specifically to age, I currently manage a team of about 6 or 7 recruiters. And I am younger than them by at least 10 years and about 22 years older or younger than my most esteemed recruiter. The person that is the most significantly older than me, interesting enough, we hit it off in the first 3 minutes of the call. I am completely confident that if he did not feel comfortable with the way I presented, the way I articulated myself, the way I explained how I intended to manage, and if that was aligned with what his goals were, I'm confident that he would have stepped away. So I'm actually grateful that he gave me the opportunity to lead him. And again, I lead a team that's significantly older than me, and they lean on me every day to support them and champion them in everything that they do. So get clear about what you want in a leader, and you can make the decision that may not be tied up in age and more about the things that you need and how you could potentially get them.
It's funny, there are still 110 people holding on to hear what you guys got to say. Do you want to answer a couple more questions? Do you want to answer a few more questions?
Let's go for it.
Do you have another? Okay, I just wanted to check with you. And if people got to go, they got to go. The recording will go out. But I just wanted to at least the fact that people are still here after the hour. How strong or slow is the interim contract market? I got that twice in the last couple seconds. You each want to respond to that?
Sure. I would say the interim market, certainly since the start of the pandemic, has been extremely strong. There has understandably been some dip in activity just given the recent layoffs, particularly in the tech sector. But I do anticipate that that's going to be coming back strong again, simply because unfortunately workforce reductions are not an exact science. And so the person who gets laid off on Friday, it may be discovered on Monday that they played a critical part in the company's business, and they need to fill that gap quickly. But obviously they are under directives that there is a headcount freeze or some other kind of hiring freeze. So I do feel like there's a place for interim in the current market. Again, I think just with sort of everything that's unexpectedly been happening in the last few weeks with the bank failures and with the reductions in force, I do think things are going to level out, and a lot of the ways that employers and companies are going to level that out is through interim resources.
And that is what I thought you were going to say. So thank you for. Which one? I'm trying to remember. I think Nina, when we talked about LinkedIn, how detailed should somebody's description be on LinkedIn? I know both of you said that your LinkedIn and resume should match, but should there be significant bullets? And I'm guessing that you shouldn't just use the about section about the company. You should be talking about the same way on your resume about what you're doing. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think just like most things, you'll approach this based on where you are in your career. I'm talking about oversaturating my LinkedIn profile with keywords. Yet, if you visit my profile today, I've intentionally eliminated most words that aren't relevant to what I'm currently doing. And that's because I'm happy where I am and I don't intend to leave anytime soon. But if I were to make a move, what I would do is, rather than copying and pasting the bullets from my resume that are way more detailed and offer a way larger scope of my accomplishments, I'm going to maybe type 3 sentences, right, that highlight what I do or what I did and the relevancy to where I want to go. In one of the first few slides of the presentation, I mentioned my career map. I'm a recruitment manager now. So if I ever wanted to move, I understand that to be at a VP level, I probably need to have managed like more than 2 people, right? And luckily for me, my team is growing. I'm thriving in that area. And turns out I'm kind of good at it. So, right, I have all this content, right? So my summary for Major Lindsay in Africa can be as basic as referring to what I actually do versus what my title says, right? I'm a managing director of candidate development. That doesn't translate to the market as a recruiter or a recruitment manager. My title is specific to this company. So I want to make an effort to eliminate that assumption. And I'm going to say recruited to manage a team of 7 recruiters that handle the recruitment needs of attorneys and law firms and corporate legal teams across the country, manages recruitment. Like, I'm just going to keep saying recruitment, management, because it's what I do and it's relevant to where I want to go. So if you are kind of like pressed for time, and I get it, like updating your resume and your LinkedIn profile at the same time can feel tedious. But if you are really serious about making sure that a layoff is not going to push you in a direction that's going to derail all of your efforts, take the time, write the 3 sentences, and focus on the relevant skills that you're going to leverage in the next role. You might be tempted to say things like, reduce legal spend by 50%. That's great. But if the role that you're applying for doesn't require you to manage legal spend, it's not relevant. And that sentence could be better purposed as managed a team of paralegals and attorneys who specialized in commercial real estate transactions, upward of 2 million in value. If I'm looking for a real estate person, I know exactly what you did. You mentioned several key terms that are relevant, and it didn't really take that much time. So make sure that you're intentional about those 3 sentences if all you have time for is 3 sentences. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. And I was going to say, I'm not the recruiter, but I would say update your resume and your LinkedIn, even if you're happy in your job, because 5 years from now, you might forget what you did. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like spring cleaning, right? You should always just make sure that you update every once in a while.
Yeah. And avoid copying and pasting those 3 sentences in every single position as well, because the reality is, even though there were similarities, you did not do the exact same thing in your last role. Every role is nuanced, every company is different, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's just gonna potentially hold you back. So take your time.
Yeah, and that's why we do recommend that the updating the resume and the LinkedIn at least once a year. Even if you have a dream job that you love and you've been in forever and never have planned to leave, we all know that there are circumstances beyond our control that come up. So when that happens, you want to be able to, if that happens, I don't want to say when, if that does happen, you want to be prepared to go out and effectively market yourself both via LinkedIn and via your resume. And you don't want to be caught flat-footed. You want to treat both of them sort of like a living, breathing organism and update them consistently with what you have done and what you are doing. And I think one of the important things too about the LinkedIn versus the resume is your resume is what you submit for positions. You will send it in as an application, essentially. You will submit your resume in for a posted job, or hopefully one of your colleagues will pass it around. But your LinkedIn resume, to Nina's point during the segment, is your LinkedIn is advertising your candidacy even while you're sleeping. So you've got a great, strong profile up there. People can look at your profile 24 hours a day and know that you're looking for a position, and you may not have sent your resume to them, or you might not have applied to their position. That is the primary tool that we use as recruiters. And so if we see you out there and we see the skills that we're looking for, we see that you are open to new opportunities, we can proactively reach out to you. It's not all about you. Let us help you do the work, because that's what we're here for.
Did you know, you two must have known what my next 2 questions are, because one, I had a question about any tips for responding to questions about managing a team, hence what Nina was talking about. I'm going to give her that in a second. But then Erica, is there a way to tailor a LinkedIn profile and resume to let people know that they're open to interim opportunities? How does somebody make that known that they are open to contract work?
Sure, absolutely. And I'll take, as far as the LinkedIn goes, that's, I think, slightly easier, because that's something that you can sort of passively do on your profile. If you go into your profile and you edit it, you can indicate different categories as to Nina was mentioning you can you can indicate that you are open to work on your profile and not have it be visible to your current employer. So that will let recruiters know, oh, this person's open to work. You can also indicate in filters what types of work you are open to. Are you only interested in full-time permanent roles? Are you interested in part-time roles? Are you interested in contract roles? And you can check those filters and let people know the types of roles that you're open to, in addition to just overall letting recruiters know that you are open to work. As far as resumes go, obviously that's a bit more on the applicant side, because there's not really a way that you can sort of let the world know on your resume that you are open to work. The fact that you are applying for a role means, I think, that there is an assumption that you are interested in opportunities and are applying for roles. So I think as far as use it as a tool for letting employers know that you are open to hearing about new opportunities, LinkedIn is really your best friend.
Mm-hmm. And Heather,
did I doing the work for you at night?
Yeah.
Yeah, the question, the managing work. So any tips for responding to questions about managing a team?
Like within the interview process?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's important to differentiate where you set in the organizational structure. As many of you know, if you're working for an organization that is siloed in nature, you may be carrying a title of general counsel, and the only person that you're managing is the paralegal that they just gave you because you had to fight to get them. That's a real thing, right? But that title holds so much weight. People naturally assume that you've managed a team. We see that at the GC level, the deputy GC level, and the AGC level. So if you know that the role that you have applied to requires you to manage a team, my recommendation is to be transparent about the fact that you have not managed a team yet. Or if your team isn't as big as the legal team that you would need to manage in the next role, dive so deep into what your responsibilities are in making that person successful. I can't stress enough that management is a lot more than quality assurance and performance reviews. Like, are you more focused on strategy, coaching, and developing the team, or are you actually still an individual contributor who's responsible for the work and developing your team? Those are really great things to call out in the conversation that you're having with the hiring manager, because chances are you also need to get clear on how they plan to manage you as you manage those other people. They have a responsibility in that as well. So the more you dive into your leadership skills, your leadership style, the more you can kind of weed out whether or not that person is aligned with you, and whether or not this opportunity is going to be the best one that's going to allow you to flourish in the role. There's nothing worse than showing up to a job on the first day, and then at the end of the week, you're like, what the heck did I get myself into? And sometimes we thrive in those situations, we figure it out. But what if you took your time, right, and interviewed with other companies who may have been better equipped to support you in learning those leadership skills that you probably needed to have before you got tossed into the fire like that? I hope that answers your question. But my general rule is be transparent. Talk about what your expectations are for leadership. Some people enjoy larger teams. Some people enjoy smaller teams. Talk about day to day and what you're looking to do in the next stages of your career, and what you want will drive what they are willing to do.
2 more questions. I still have 80 people on, which is great. 2 more. How does one find a recruiter to work with? This is a softball. You both should. I mean, how do you find a recruiter to work with? How do you find somebody to, if you're not working with somebody already?
Reach out. There are multiple recruiters out there, particularly with, of course, I'm going to say with Major Lindsay in Africa. And we do encompass, Nina and I are focused on interim legal talent. However, we work with a variety of our colleagues across different practice groups. And there is no one size fits all for a recruiter, but I think a great place to start is if you're an attorney and you are looking for a legal recruiter, reach out to us or to one of our colleagues. Major Lindsay in Africa has been around for 40 years, so we know what we're doing. And again, we cover a variety of different practices, in-house, partner practice group, associate practice group, interim legal talent. So you will find somebody that will fit your needs there. But feel free to reach out. If you like somebody's background, reach out to them, send them an email, give them a call, and because you can't guarantee that recruiters are going to find you on LinkedIn or through submission of your resume. If you see something you like, give us a call.
Unless they use your tips, then you'll find them, right? So
Yeah.
use the optimization. Last question: what should somebody do for those looking for GC or CLO roles? How does somebody emphasize the specific areas of expertise or leadership skills?
That's a great question. Assuming that, well, let me take a step back. I have met extremely brilliant attorneys, specifically in the market, that align themselves with the organizations who prep every attorney they hire for leadership. Some of those organizations may do that by strategically designing their legal department to frequently challenge their attorneys to explore new practice areas. We work with a company right now who will point out or identify someone with potential, and they say, hey, we've seen that you've been in this siloed role with this title for a while. If you want to get leadership experience, we don't have anything open right now, but if you take this 6-month project to go lead this team in Korea, you can come back, leverage it, you have everything you need, right? On the other hand, another organization can prepare their attorneys for management or GC opportunities by training everybody as a generalist, right? In today's market, we've seen that you can be a general counsel of a very specific division or a regional area, maybe like North America, or general counsel of technology and licensing transactions, right? Or in smaller organizations, you are the person, the go-to, so to speak, for all things legal. Find the type of organization or organizational structure that you prefer the most, and maybe focus on landing with those types of companies that will understand how your existing or previous leadership skills transitions into the organization. It's going to be extremely difficult to explain how you have been a general counsel for the last 9 years and never managed a soul to an organization who only knows rolling up their sleeves and dabbling in everything because their business depends on it. So the more strategic you are with aligning yourself with those companies, the easier it is to communicate and translate that experience. And Heather, I know you said that was the last question, but I actually got a text from someone who reached out. She said, what is your
I
advice
have more
to
questions. I'm just trying to be cognizant of people's time. I still have about 15 questions.
I think this one is a great one to like wrap things up. She said,
okay,
what is your advice to candidates about letting their recruiter know that they are considering multiple opportunities? I ask this because we have lost a couple of roles and lost out on candidates who did not disclose to their recruiter that they were also considering other opportunities. Is there a way to do this and that honors the client and the candidate?
I think you should answer that question. That goes kind of along the lines of somebody else that earlier asked, how long can I take to make a decision, right?
Yeah.
So,
Erica, what do you think?
I mean, obviously, we can only control what we can control. And the candidates that we work with are, I always tell candidates, you need to do the best thing for you. But I ask that in order to be a good partner with me in your career path, I need you to be transparent with me and upfront with me and give me real-time updates. I expect the candidates I work with to be in demand. I expect them to be highly skilled and highly sought after. But you don't do yourself any favors as a candidate if you are not transparent with your recruiter about where you are in the process. If you are in the 6th round of interviews with a company and you would accept their offer in a heartbeat, don't lose credibility with either your recruiter or with a prospective employer by not disclosing that information. If you withhold that information, again, it does a tremendous disservice to everybody. And in addition, I will tell you as a recruiter, I appreciate transparency and openness and communication. If you are interviewing with a prospective employer that is not somebody that I am working with, but you also want to double track your candidacy for a role that I am working with, please tell me that you are in these interviews, because that can help me do my job when I partner with my business development colleague to say, hey, listen, Nina is really interested in this job, but she is highly sought after. She is interviewing for this other role. So you want to please let the client know that, she is highly in demand and highly sought after. So if the client wants to make a move, let them know that they're going to need to move quickly. So with that information, my colleagues can go back to clients and maybe get them to make a faster decision or make an offer more quickly. And that is to your benefit. And, you may be interviewing with another opportunity, but there's no guarantee you're going to get an offer there. So you want to maintain good relations all around and respect all around. And, that information can help me sometimes push a client toward making a quicker decision as far as making a job offer to you. So all I can do is emphasize with candidates open lines of communication. I will be open with you about the information I have. So I ask for you to please do the same for me. And, as I mentioned earlier in this call, the legal community is small, and, you want to maintain good relations with your recruiter because you may never know when you may need to work with them again. And that's not any kind of a threat or intimidation or anything, but maintaining professional relations and upfront relations with your recruiter and your recruiting company is only going to benefit you in both the short and the long run. And Nina, I don't know if you want to add on to that, but that's my thought.
Yeah, I spent my morning handling a similar situation. We're running a search based in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our candidate, who's currently the front runner, sits in Richmond, Virginia. The general counsel recognizes that this is going to be a really meaningful decision for one of the 3 candidates that she's interviewing. And she even had the emotional intelligence to identify on their, phone screens that hey, everybody is saying they're open to contract to perm opportunities, but I also recognize that these people are permanently employed. If they're exploring other opportunities, are they really going to be interested in a temp to perm role when they have a permanent opportunity at their fingertips? And the answer to that question varies based on what you tell your recruiter. If you tell your recruiter that you're flexible with interim, it makes sense if it has certain components of what you're looking for, but that you also have a permanent offer on the table, that is going to alert your recruiter that that client needs to put their best foot forward. That is their opportunity to advocate for you rather than them. My colleagues might hate me for saying this, but companies are self-sustainable. They'll be okay, but the more you communicate, the more you're able to build rapport, the more you are developing a working relationship that's going to get you the things that you need most. And when you hide the realities of your search, you're blocking potential opportunities. You may not be getting the opportunities that actually align with what you want, because when you're asked about what you're looking for, you focus on compensation or say you're open to anything because you can't be unemployed, and all of those things may be true, but the more detailed you are about what you want with yourself and your recruiter, the more you and us can help guide you to an opportunity that actually meets what is going to bring you the most satisfaction at this stage of your career. So be transparent about the offers. This morning, I learned that my candidate was the front runner. She also told me that she's exploring another opportunity in Silicon Valley, offering at least 30,000 more than what this client was willing to offer. I took it back. The client agreed to increase the rate, and she is expediting her interview for the possibility to compete for her candidacy. When you check off all the boxes, people are going to make more of an effort to advocate for you, which takes us back to the concept of, if those things aren't present or clearly articulated, you may end up in this space where you're having a lot of interviews and not making it to the offer. So I hope this was helpful.
And now we are at the time where I promise, half hour later, but you guys are never going to do a webinar with me again. After all, we're going to just stay on the phone for an hour and a half. So I wanted to thank you both. We still have more questions, but I have to be respectful of people's time. I know Nina and Erica have calls that they have to be on. But thank you, everybody. Thank you to everybody that stayed on. My God, we had 75 people who are still on for an hour and a half. So that just tells you how important everything you're sharing is. If you didn't get to download the handouts, we will send them to you usually within about 48 hours, as soon as I can get the webinar up and then the emails out. Please don't hesitate to reach out to these ladies. Emails are on the screen. And thank you again. Also, brief survey will pop up on the screen afterwards. It's short, but one of the things it does ask you is what type of content you would like to hear from us, what kind of career advice, other than that bot video that Nina's going to start working on in about 10 minutes. But thank you very, very much for your time today, and be well, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.